Welcome back, Crusher Crew. We have an exciting show tonight that's going to have an interesting twist. We've been hearing a lot of weird stuff in the news lately with the reports from Jacob Barber coming out on News Nation and Ross Coulthart talking about these egg-shaped UAPs as a part of the UFO crash recovery program, as well as these octagon-shaped UFOs or UAP that they also claim to have recovered, along with remote viewing, telepathic abilities. And there's all these weird and strange little nuggets inside the story when you peel back the layers. And one of them that we're going to dig into tonight that's really fascinating to me and actually kind of hits close to home to a childhood experience that I had when I was abducted, that includes these entities showing up and either holding or carrying or using some kind of magic wand, something that looks like a wand or a stick. And we're going to cover several instances of alien or ultra-terrestrial or other entity abductions and encounters where it involves the appearance or the use of one of the entities holding what looks like a device, a stick, a staff, or a wand. And these are going to be really interesting. And at the very end, I'm going to share my personal abduction story when I was 11 years old. And I also saw an entity that was holding what looked like a wand. There is a connection between the paranormal, UFOs, and the myths of ancient history. The clues are scattered across the landscape from a forbidden past, maybe even in your own backyard. There is a connection between the true nature of our reality, consciousness, and the unexplained. I'm Carl the Crusher. Let's explore the unknown. Shout out to the Patreon page and the Crusher Crew Inner Circle over on the Patreon page and the members of the MUPOS team. Remember, we're partnered with Dr. Jim Segala, who was working with Hal Puthoff out of the Stanford Research Institute. And now we have these modular unidentified phenomena alert systems, these mini sensors that you can plug into your house or put out in your yard or property to detect and actually capture the evidence of paranormal activity or even UFOs or any kind of interaction, even if you have an out-of-body experience or sleep paralysis, anything strange like that. It live tracks and captures the data, and you can actually get the help and advice from Dr. Jim Segala, who came right out of this program and has even gone back to the Pentagon and reported and still operates under his levels of government clearance. So as we get into tonight's show, it's going to get really interesting. Like I said at the intro, we're going to be talking about abductions and encounters with entities that involved the use of some kind of a wand or a stick. And the first one that we're going to talk about is a fascinating one, and it involves this nuclear facility military police officer, Mario Woods, and he was on the Jesse Michaels show. And I'm going to put the links to all of this down in the description box below. But Mario Woods has this amazing story about a time when he was abducted by this giant sphere that was like the size of a building. And then he had an experience where he saw these entities. So let's just hear for a minute what the ship actually seemed like or what showed up.
So as we traversed down Highway 79 toward Newell to a stop sign, there's one stop sign and one stoplight in Newell. And the population then was 230 people in that town. And it was on the entrance and the exit on Highway 79. Every time I entered Newell, population was 230. When I left, it was 230. So now it's 600 and something. As I was there in 21. But as we went downhill, I lost sight of that pulsating glow. We went down to the stop sign. We took a right, and the road goes out about 1.5 miles, and then it doglegs back to the left. And as we turned left on the not a hard left, just a dog leg left, there sat this object on top of November 5 that was about 10 feet in the air, directly on top of that blast door. That was the size of a Walmart building. This thing was as big as this building you're in right here. It was huge, and it was a sphere. It had an energy source that moved around it like like you'd see pictures of the sun, how it's just like boiling. I don't want to call it plasma, but I don't know what really to call it. But there were no tail sections, no portholes. There were no thrusters. There was no leading edges of any kind, no wings, tail section, nothing that we would associate anything in the air with. It was a complete sphere, but on a magnitude that is just hard to even comprehend.
We're going to skip ahead in this interview now over to 30 minutes and about 25 seconds in here. And he's going to actually talk about what happens next. In the middle of that, what I skipped over, you should definitely go listen to the full interview. And he was also interviewed on the Lato Files channel by Chris Lato. And it's an amazing interview, as well as the one with Michael Herrera that we're going to get to next that's included in all of this. But what's fascinating is that Mario Woods talks about how the guy that was with him that was actually driving the truck goes into like this catatonic state where he's gripping the steering wheel and just staring ahead, and he becomes so unresponsive that he doesn't respond to anything that Mario Woods says. And even after the whole encounter is over, they can't even get him to let go of the steering wheel, and he's just like frozen there, like paralyzed in the driver's seat of the truck. And then later he even talks about how Mario and his partner that was working with him that night, they actually met up, and he remembered the whole thing, but couldn't describe why he was paralyzed and why he was catatonic and couldn't respond. But really fascinating here. So let's get into the details now of Mario Woods and his whole abduction. And when you go over to the Lato Files and listen to the full interview with him that goes into more detail, it gets really wild, like of some of the things that he remembers when he was aboard the craft or allegedly taken by these entities afterwards. So there's bits and pieces of the puzzle when you listen to different podcasts and interviews that paint the whole picture that you can kind of fit together. That's pretty fascinating.
Hold my breath and squeeze, like pilots do that, in G suits to keep the blood in their head, right? But I felt as if I was going to pass out. And I started getting this tunnel vision effect in a way where I couldn't see, and it was just getting smaller and smaller, and it was black on the exterior of that visual that I was looking out the front window. I mean, all these thoughts are running around in your brain, and this is all taking place in just a couple of minutes, not 10 minutes, not even 5 minutes, from what I understand. And as I'm blacking out, I know I feel something on my right side. And I turn my head and I see these 4, I'm going to call them beings. And they are not walking as you and I walk. They are just gliding across the ground. Maybe, I don't know how high off the ground. I couldn't really see that. But they have these little uniforms on. And the one on the far right, he had some type of a small wand in his waist belt. I've got a drawing of it.
And there you have it. And his encounter. And now this is an encounter that was taken very legitimately, where he was debriefed multiple times. And I believe that he's even gone to testify privately to members of Congress or the Senate Select Committee. I'm not sure, or that he has offered and said that he would. But his entire incident was well documented, witnessed by multiple people that know that he had missing time after this incident. And again, I want to just point out the fact that this thing in its waistcoat or tucked in its belt had some kind of a magic wand or some kind of a stick or device that was glowing on the tip. It just sounds like something right out of Harry Potter or like Lord of the Rings or something. But here you have it. These entities or beings that have a magic wand or some kind of a device that's like a pointer thing or a stick. That's very fascinating. So let's hear a little bit more about the story, and then we'll move on to the next one.
That had a yellow tip on it, some type of a yellow tip. And it really got my attention. And I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. But the one behind those 3, the front 3 were the same size, exactly the same size. looked exactly the same. But the one behind him was a chest and a head taller than the little guys. And he had this thing on his chest right here that pulsated the same color as what was on that little wand.
Okay, so that's a really fascinating detail. If we skip back here a little bit, he describes 3 entities that emerged, and the one of them seemed to be taller than the others, and the other 2 were a little bit smaller, and one of them had like the wand in his belt, and they were wearing like these uniforms and had a thing on his chest. It's just so fascinating. And notice the skin color as like this muted kind of green. All of these details are going to add up to sort of a pattern that we're going to hear in all of these stories that is just mind-blowing to me. If this stuff is real, just fathom what this means. And where do these entities come from? What do you think? Do they actually come from Zeta Reticuli or from some outer space place where they're coming through wormholes or time traveling or something? Are they us from the future? Like it's all strange to me. Or do they live alongside of us? You know, are they coming out of the ocean? Is it some sort of like land of the lost thing where they live in some hidden dimension, parallel dimension alongside of us, and they can come back and forth? But here you have a taller entity with 2 shorter ones, and one of them holding a kind of a wand or device. It's just fascinating. So let's check this out again.
Taller than the little guys. And he had this thing on his chest right here that pulsated the same color as what was on that little wand. And when I saw him, then I was afraid. Then I felt fear. Maybe just visualized fear. I don't know. They didn't do anything to me that caused fear other than where I was and what I'd just gone through. And then I went black. I just went, that's the last thing that I saw in my mind.
Okay, so please again go watch the full interview over on Jesse Michaels and on the Chris Lato channel, which is actually where we're going to go right now, is over to the Lato files. When we jump to this interview with Michael Herrera exposes shocking UFO crash retrievals. Again, I'll put the link in the description box below. Now, he was had an encounter with a rogue military program and had a personal experience with all of this and seeing one of these alleged 8-gon crafts and how it was used and stuff. But there's also a little nugget in here where he describes the humans that were part of some kind of a secret Delta Force team using a type of wand, or what they call a static wand.
So I met this person. We just kind of shook hands, say, hey, and he's like, thank you, you sounded good up there, like keep up the good work, this stuff has to get out. I didn't think much of it. I completely didn't look like that type of person, what you'd expect. Dressed like a nerd, like somebody at a convention per se, you couldn't pick him out from, separate from the crowd, so to speak. So he's very good at playing optics with situational awareness. But going back to the meeting, so when I met this gentleman, he had pulled out a wand when we went into the secured area. So he rubbed it around himself, all the extremities, and then he handed it to me. And he said, go ahead and, track your whole body with it. It was to check for bugs and to check for chips. And because some people that, in this organization are all chipped.
Ambushed by very effective, super experienced, middle-aged men in black ops, at least equipment that you didn't recognize readily. You recognized a lot of it, I guess, but it's kind of a mismatch of equipment. But they also had advanced helmets, comm gear, and interesting, I noticed, was advanced aiming reticles and augmented laser rangefinders. I thought that was quite interesting. Mm-hmm. The other thing I'll just write down, they also said they checked the guy out. This is in the story. They checked him out with a small box with a loop antenna, kind of what you just mentioned, where they had some sort of wand that went over him, over his whole body, over his head as well. I thought was interesting. And then they say, he doesn't have it, so let's go with plan B. That's where they kill him, I guess. They put the refugees in a modified shipping container, and that's where the HVAC unit comes in. So you had mentioned when you saw the containers, it had this HVAC on it, and that's why you thought it was human trafficking and not weapons, I guess, if that's
Those
correct.
drugs is what I originally thought.
Oh, you
like
thought it
vacuum
was drugs.
sealed.
Oh, to keep it like humidified, I guess, so the
Yeah.
drugs don't, get ruined or something. And then that's when the man came and contacted you and said, hey, actually, it's not drugs, it's people. And then that's when you went on the Sean Ryan show and and seemed really angry about this.
I was, and I still am, to an extent. I mean, I have further understanding on why they do what they do, and the first thing I want to tell people, and this may be a first time for a lot of people, because I've already done some interviews where I've explained this. It's still people, the element of human, right? Because coming to find out, these black team operators are not at a consciousness level that is superior enough to have access to this advanced technology, what they call AT or ET technology. So because they can't operate this stuff by themselves, means that they have to have something else to do it for them. Well, that something else to do it for them is going to be these guys who are what they call psionics or P3 assets to begin with. P3 stands for psionic predisposition potential, or they dub it P3. And this is a screening program that they use to screen certain people throughout the world at a genetic level, from what I understand, that are borderline psychic. And they have the ability to, with help of the black team, with the drugs that they administer with them to boost their consciousness even higher, that they can access this technology pretty easy. So if you think about it this way, option A is going to be a black team member. Option B is going to be a psionic asset. Option C is going to be the advanced tech or ET tech. So black team uses a device that hooks and interfaces with the P3 asset, and then that P3 asset goes and hooks up to that advanced ET technology. From that, what it basically does is they can pilot the stuff. They can. They also are engineers with this too. There's an integration with scientists, and this goes all the way back to Operation Paperclip, as a matter of fact, where they pull the brightest minds from Germany, even people who are developing the cutting edge technology that, they talk about the saucer, the Glocke, as they call it, or even the saucer that they built. A lot of those scientists end up getting tapped from the black team, and that's how they started doing this R&D program. But the difference is when they started getting in contact with actual non-human intelligence in their crafts, and they started shooting them down, there was basically a mismatch. There was a missing link, if you will. Well, when they figured out that these people exist on Earth that can relatively accommodate them, then that's basically how they solved that problem. So what I actually witnessed in 2009 was not a drug smuggling operation. It was a recruitment program that they were utilizing, scooping people up from that area. And it could be other areas throughout the world, because they look for third world countries. And the reason being is because if they take somebody who's not used to the lifestyle of being a P3 asset, where you have everything provided for you, this includes their families, even if they're children, their children get educations, they get free medical, they get housing, they get food, they get clean water, they have everything that they could ever need provided for them. The way I was briefed about this, it's almost like the United States going to third world countries to look for cheaper means of manufacturing, right? Or they pulling, so if they can make more money in the United States, which means it would cost more money manufacturing, then they go to third world countries for a cheaper labor source, if you will. So they do the same thing. But they don't harm these people. They don't mistreat them. They don't hold them at gunpoint like we were, or they weren't murdered like this JSOC operator was. They keep them relatively happy, and then they basically induce them with drugs, and they also chip them so they can track them. They can keep tabs on them at any point. And what they administer drug-wise is basically serotonin and a bunch of uppers. Now, the thing with this, too, is because when they give them these drugs and they interface with this machinery, part of the problem was back then, and it still may go on today, and I don't know for a fact, but when they were hooking up to this device, they would two things would happen. Either they would go in a coma, or they would pass away. The subjects pass away from the drugs after an extended period of time, because it's very hard on the endocrine system, it's very hard on the body. And too much in the, everybody knows in this world, too much of something is not a good thing. And with these drugs, the only reason why they do this is to basically keep them at a higher elevated consciousness to help them with their agenda, which is this technology. And, people have to understand that it's not only a small percentage of what they do involves anything with reverse engineered craft. That's a very small percentage. It's the most boringest percentage out of everything else that they've got. They've got some very sophisticated weapon systems. They've got a lot of other things that, to my knowledge, I've only heard references from, but I cannot confirm that with, at least with this source yet. So these people are kept at these facilities. They have a breeding program. I know only a little bit about that, but come to find out, the person that picked me up from the airport, if people track what I said earlier, was one of the byproducts of that program.
It's a breeding program, you said?
Yes. So use the analogy. And this is what he told me. He says that it takes 1,000 horses to breed the most perfect horse to run at a derby or something, the fastest horse that has the best, I don't know anything about horses per se, but, I understand that, you have to mingle and breed the best options, and then they filter down and keep doing the same thing until you end up getting the most perfected versions at some point. They've been doing this with humans. So everybody thinks that they're trying to do stuff with ET integration. I don't know anything about that. I don't personally believe it unless I see it for myself, of course. And it could be possible. But from what I was told, that these people are bred, and they're also bred to basically work in these facilities, because everybody asks the question, including myself, why don't the janitors, why doesn't the facilities maintenance guys, why don't the cooks ever come forward and talk about this? Well, it's because they're in with this. And if they're having everything provided for them and they blow the lid on it, then they don't have access to anything anymore. These people don't have social security numbers. So if they're illegal aliens per se, then you can bet them that they'd probably either be escorted out to some other country, if you will. I don't know the process of that, but that's just basically hypothetically thinking. But they don't come forward because they're comfortable with what they're doing. And what he explained to me when I first met him is that if you were to liberate any of these people in these bases and installations and black sites, that you would be liberating people who don't want to be liberated.
Now, what they're referencing there on the Lato Files channel is this book that's supposed to come out, but right now is kind of getting blocked by the Pentagon or the government or something like that for approval. But the first 2 chapters are available on Stephen Creer's website, and you can just download it as a PDF. But it's called Sentinels of the Ether. And Michael Herrera was involved in this. And I believe, allegedly, also Jacob Barber is involved or in similar stories, or was in the involvement of the writing of this Sentinels of the Ether. And it is the whole story of the encounter between Michael Herrera and these other Delta Force operators that involved reverse engineered ET technology. And even though it's represented as a fictional story, it's obviously taken from the experiences of Michael Herrera and Jacob Barber likewise, in order to function as a part of disclosure. And if you skip down here to page 24, it straight out talks about how on pad 3, it said, then man 3 slid open the left side, left clear. On pad 3, a man wearing an elbow-high leather glove and holding a static wand stood ready to receive the spinning container. Inside the container, the nauseated human cargo embraced one another and contemplated their fate. H2 hovered patiently behind H1 and waited for hand signals as colossal clamshell doors slowly rolled closed behind his helicopter. So this is crazy. It actually talks about how inside the shipping containers that Michael Herrera may have seen getting loaded into this 8-gon octagon-shaped reverse engineered flying saucer was these climate-controlled containers or pods that were being loaded on these trucks into the bottom of this UFO or flying saucer. And as they were being like basically searched and had their weapons and everything taken away because it was an encounter between the Delta Force operators or whoever that was running that operation with the shipping container. The Michael Herrera's team or the other team was having their guns taken away and everything because they had stumbled across this on accident. So in that instance, there we have a magic wand being used to not only swipe over the individuals to check them for bugs or devices or something weird, but also to control the spinning container. And it's some kind of a weird tool that can be used for multiple things. And we see it being used as a kind of a reverse engineered technology that even these special forces operators utilize. And so, really fascinating that we have not only ET or strange entities using what seem to be alien wands or reverse engineered technology, but also, special forces and these weird entities using them likewise, just different versions of them. Now, we also have this story that comes from J. Christopher King, where he talks about his alien abduction when he was 11 years old. And now, when I saw this episode, I kind of like freaked out. I was in Florida doing a podcast with Mike Busey down there in Orlando. And we were watching this show late at night on TV. And J. Christopher King told this story. And I literally jumped up off the couch and I was like, no way, no freaking way. Because what he describes in his abduction experience is very relatable and very similar to me. Exactly like Mario Woods' story that we saw earlier of these entities, and there's one taller one and two shorter ones, and one has a wand. All of that is super familiar to me. So check this story out.
Where I fell asleep and I woke up, and past the foot of my bed, there were two beings that match the description of the small gray non-human beings. And I feel sometimes reluctant to talk about it because I know the stigma attached to this. One of them seems to be floating above the floor somehow. Initially, I actually wasn't scared. It was like a sense of wonder, but that feeling was only a couple seconds. Very quickly, almost at once, the being off the foot of my bed started moving towards me. And as it started moving towards me, the other being raised its arm that had this wand in its hand towards me. And at that point, I was terrified. And I don't remember what happened after that.
So there you have it. J. Christopher King recounting his story when he was 11 years old is actually holding a wand and pointing it at him. And then as soon as he witnesses that, just like Mario, he blacks out and it's like he can't remember. And there's this missing time incident. And so what a fascinating story from J. Christopher King. You can follow him on Instagram, and he's made appearances on different TV shows and worked with James Fox on some of his projects. So go check that out. I also was listening to the audiobook by Whitley Streber called Communion. And I'm also weirdly kind of trying to get in contact with Whitley Streber to work with him. And if you do watch this, please let me know. I would love to do an interview with you to see if we can talk about some of these nuanced memories and details about these encounters with the phenomena. So now let's listen to Whitley Streber tell some of his story about an entity that appears and uses what he describes as like a needle or a wand or something, and then it projects these kinds of visions into his mind. So check this one out.
Moments, I was hypnotized. If you see something that is very frightening, you will remain asleep. You will remain asleep, but you will tell us how you feel. The night of October the 4th, you have woken up. You have woken up now. It's light. There's something in the room with you. It's dark. Tell me what you see. When he sees I see him, he comes over to the bed. He looks mean. He's little. Goes up to about the top of the lamp, looking down on me. Got eyes, big slanted eyes, a bald head. He's looking down on me. He's got a ruler in his hand, has a tip of silver. Touches me. I see pictures. Long pause.
So there he describes it as like a ruler with a silver tip on the end, very similar to Mario, and very interesting. So you have this entity that's short and comes across menacing. He's like paralyzed, like a sleep paralysis incident, and he notices that this thing is holding what looks like a ruler or some kind of a device with a silver glowing tip on the end.
I see pictures of the world just blowing up. I see pictures of the whole place just blowing up when he touches my head with this thing. I weep at this point. Jesus, it's a picture of like a whole big blast, and there's a dark red fire in the middle of it, and there's white smoke all around it. And I remember a voice. That's your home. That's your home. You know why this will happen. I know why. He weeps. Why don't you like me? Why do you hate me? Dr. Klein, who said that? I said that. Why'd you just put that thing on me? And it has the whole world blowing up. That's what I want to know. What is this about? What is it about? I felt here a sharp internal question, wordless. I don't know what it's about. When is this going to blow up? What's going to blow up? A flashing picture of my son. I know what's going to blow up. I know what's going to blow up. I know it is too. Was then touched again. Oh, green. Shows me a park. I see my son. What's this got to do with him? Is this the devil? What the hell is this? Remembered voice. I won't hurt you. I know you won't. I know you won't hurt me. Stop. Oh, the house is burning down. The house is on fire. No, it's not. That sounds stupid. Why did I say that? Something woke you up. What happened? I then emerged spontaneously from hypnosis. Explosion. I knew that. I was expecting it. I knew when it would come. He took a little thing like a needle and struck it like a match in front of my face, and it made a big bang. Pow! And I thought the house was on fire. But Hopkins, was he there after this? I don't know. I don't remember a thing. When I said the house was on fire, I'm already out of the bed, right away. This was an explosion that Anne and your son, I think the explosion that they all heard, yeah. He did it with a little needle, stuck it in the air. Why did he show you those images? I don't know why he showed me those images, to be frank with you.
So fascinating. You have Whitley Streber. Now, he's been studied by many people in the government and written several books that are excellent. I highly recommend it. There's even been a movie, Communion, that's been made about his encounters. But his story is really fascinating. But there you have it, it using like some kind of a ruler with a silver tip. And then also that it's when he points it in the air, that there's like an explosion. And now I just want to say for a second that in many of my experiences, it happens like when I'm getting ready to go to bed or I'm laying down in bed, and then it's right in that spot between being awake and asleep. And then there's this strange vibration that I can feel that's almost like, is it there? Is it not there? And it feels almost like it's really deep in the earth. And then there's like sometimes this loud bang or this explosion or like a popping noise. And then I feel like I'm floating outside of my body, or there's an entity in the room or a shadow figure or something. And then I will also have like very similar and fascinating visions like that. But one of the first experiences that I ever had in my life was actually when I was 11 years old, and we saw the encounter earlier with J. Christopher King talking about this. And now they had artists and everything do these depictions and everything But Mario, who was abducted at the nuclear base that we saw at the very beginning, he had some hand-drawn sketches. And so I just got a pencil out and drew kind of my personal memory, just one picture. And then what I did was threw it into AI and had it kind of interpret it from what I encountered. But I'm going to go ahead and show you a screenshot. But first, I want to set the stage because my drawing is a little bit corny. It's not super accurate, but remember, I'm like 11 years old when all of this happened to me. So imagine that you're me for a minute, and I was just 11 years old. My parents were going on like a work trip, and this is going to be one of the first times I was going to be home by myself. And my friend who lived down on the corner of the street from me, his parents were also going on a different work convention and we're going to be gone. It was just this weird coincidence. And so we worked it out like, hey, so we don't have to stay alone. Why don't you come over and sleep over at my house? So we agreed I was going to go over and sleep over at his house for the night. And so we could not have to be alone in the house by ourselves at 11. But remember, this is back in the 1980s when they used to have TV commercials on at 10 p.m. that was like, it's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are?
It's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are?
Because we were like free range kids. It was totally normal at like 11 years old to be home by yourself or walking to school by yourself and back. So anyways, so I went over for the sleepover. We hung out and basically we were just like goofing off, talking about girls that we liked and sports and different things and movies and stuff. And then as the sun went down and it got into the evening, we decided instead of trying to like sleep in the bedroom somewhere, we were going to sleep out on the living room floor down in the basement area because he had a big screen TV there. And in the morning, we were going to watch Saturday morning cartoons. That was the plan. So we got sleeping bags and we were going to sleep out on the living room floor so we could just wake up and watch cartoons when we got up. And so as we're laying there talking, it was one of those things where he fell asleep and I realized I was still telling his story and he was already out. And so I started drifting off to fall asleep. And then suddenly it was like this explosion. There's this loud burst of wind and energy was suddenly rushing over me from head to toe, like from the top down. And it was like a vacuum sucking, like blowing through the room. And I thought that like a window had swung open or a door or something had burst open. All this wind was blowing through the room, but it was like this weird energy. It wasn't like normal wind. It was very strange. And so I like woke up and I was startled. And as I got my wits about me, I look over and my friend is already sitting upright. So he's fully sitting up in his sleeping bag and he's like trying to scream, but there's no sound coming out of his mouth. He's like has his mouth open and he's kicking his legs. And as I look down, I see this entity at the foot of his sleeping bag and it's like this little goblin. And so this is where I'm going to show you the picture now. So this is pretty much what I saw. I know that this is just like a pencil sketch and it's not like amazing or anything, but what I saw was like this little entity that had these big eyes that were like these almond shaped classic alien eyes. But these things had a nose, like a longer nose, and even had pointy ears like these little goblins or like elves. I can't explain it. I don't have an understanding of it. I'm just telling you what happened and what I saw. But this thing was grabbing at my friend's feet. So what I saw was this one over here on the right first. And my friend was like sitting up. Basically, it was like trying to grab his feet. And I realized at the exact same time that there was one at my feet as well that was trying to grab my legs. It's really difficult to describe the entire incident, but basically there was 3 entities and 2 of them were smaller. I would say they were like 3 feet tall or something like that. And one of each of them was on each of us and they were trying to grab our legs or our ankles. And so this was like the one that was trying to grab me. And it also had like this weird kind of pea green colored skin tone, almost like a yellowy green color. And it had pointy ears and a pointy nose and a little small mouth, like that stayed closed the whole time. And it was like crouched down at my feet and it was trying to grab my ankles. And so there was two of them trying to grab us, and past them I could see where the hallway used to be. So like behind this one, there was a hallway that went back and there was like a bathroom and bedrooms and other stuff. And then there was the wall here. And then there was the couch and windows that went outside. And where all of this was supposed to be, this wall and the hallway that went down to the bedrooms, instead of that being there, it was like this big swirling vortex, and it went down like a tube or like a tunnel, like going off a waterfall or down a water slide. So it was this big, like a 10 or 12 foot wide swirling portal, like opened up, that went in and down. And these two entities that were like at our feet were basically, to me, it felt like they were trying to grab us to pull us into that hole or in down that water slide, into the land of the lost or whatever. And this third entity was actually taller, like just like J. Christopher King said, he was like a head and shoulders taller than the other two. And he was actually floating in the air, just like Jay describes. This thing was floating in the air, and it even had one leg up. I didn't draw this one very good, but it had one leg up in the air and the other one down. And it had like a loincloth on, and it looked older. It had a bigger head. It had bigger ears that were like hanging down, and a droopy nose, like a long nose, like some weird alien or goblin thing. And in its hand, it had a wand, like a magic wand. I saw the same thing. Now, I don't remember it having a silver tip or a glowing tip. I just saw this wand, and I realized that this thing, this tall one, it was like looking at me, and it was pointing the wand down at us. And I had this strong impression like it was using the wand to either control me and control my friend, or it was like using it like a remote control to sort of like tell these other two entities what to do. And as soon as I saw the wand, just like Jay, just like Mario at the nuclear base, it was like everything went boom and went blank. Like all of a sudden it was like reality just went poof, like you're when you ever go under anesthesia, when you have surgery or have dental work done, and when you pass out, it was like that. All of a sudden it's just like poof, the whole thing stops. And then next thing I know, I was going to show you, I have the AI art that did a depiction of it. So this is what the AI generated art came up with. Now, I don't remember the wand looking like this. It was literally in his right hand, and it was just like like a Harry Potter wand. It was not like a big long wizard staff like in this one. But this is probably the closest depiction that the artificial intelligence got to what it looked like. So here's like us in the sleeping bags. There was these two entities crouched down trying to grab us by the ankles. And then the other one was actually up off to the right and was floating in the air with a small wand. But the Mid-Journey could not figure that out. But there's definitely like a portal, and it was going in and going down. But this is very, very accurate. And when I described the skin color of the entities, it kind of did the whole picture that way. But just imagine that the portal and all of this in the background was just dark, like a dark tube going in. But and the skin color of these entities did look like this, though. This is pretty accurate to the color of their skin, like little green men, And so this was another one. This is more accurate to what the wand thing looked like. And the taller one did have a loincloth on. The ears on the big one did kind of look like this, but the heads were different. I don't remember them having any teeth like that. But this is also another AI art depiction. This one as well is kind of similar. The eyes, the way I remember the eyes being like that, But also, again, these are a little bit strange. But yeah, this was kind of the encounter that I had. But basically what happened was, as soon as the entity pointed the wand at me, everything went blank. And then all of a sudden, it's like I'm up at the, like, waking up, and the sun has come up, and I don't remember anything in between. It's like I've been asleep the whole time or passed out. And then the sun's coming in, and I'm looking up, and it's like this wood paneling or weird wood particle board or something with these metal strips and screws everywhere. And I was super confused, like, where am I? And I realized that I'm in my sleeping bag, but now I'm upstairs underneath the kitchen table. And I have no idea how I got upstairs underneath the kitchen table. It's like now I'm on the wrong floor of the house in the wrong spot. And I look over, and my friend is there next to me. Like, somehow now we're upstairs underneath the kitchen table, and we have no idea how we got there. And he's already awake too. And it's not like we're waking up from being asleep. It's like we're coming out of being passed out or something really weird. And all of a sudden we like look over at him. I look over at him, and he looks at me. And the first thing that he says is, "There was 3 of them." And I said, "I know." And then we freaked out, and we jumped out of our sleeping bags, and we ran outside into the backyard, and we turned around and looked back at the house. And he was like, "There was 3 of them." And I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "They had ears, like big ears." And I was like, I know, I saw him. And I was like, "One had a wand." And he goes, "And it was wearing like a loincloth." And I was like, "I know." And we both remembered the whole thing up until we like blanked out. We had the same memory of seeing these 2 entities, the taller one floating with the portal and the wand. I can't explain it, but we both remembered the whole thing. And I've talked to him since, like as adults, and he remembers all of that. But he's like, "I don't know if we were just made it up, or my memory's all foggy," and he doesn't like to talk about it and stuff. But it happened, and it's been really fascinating, and also really validating that in the stories of Sentinels of the Ether with Michael Herrera and Jacob Barber, you've got them using reverse engineered entity tech or extra ET or whatever technology that involves these wands or static wands for all different kinds of purposes. But also you have the story of Mario at the nuclear base, seeing the entity, and one of them has the wand tucked in its belt. And there's 2 shorter ones and a taller one, just like J. Christopher King sees an entity when he was like the same age as me, when he was 11, and he sees it floating in the air, up in the air, holding a wand. And so it's really fascinating. Let me know in the comments below or during the live chat if you've ever had any kind of experience like this. It sounds like almost something like out of Irish or Scottish folklore, like the Fae or something, like a fairy or a goblin or some sort of like a leprechaun or something that would have a magic wand, like something out of Lord of the Rings. I don't know. It's really fascinating, but maybe there's something to it. Maybe this disclosure is going to get more deeper and stranger than we realize. If we're going to have egg-shaped and octagon-shaped flying saucers and UAPs, UFOs, and the entities piloting them potentially are using things like wands and devices that come out of our ancient folklore, maybe there is actually something to it. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Make sure and subscribe and hit the thumbs up button, and we'll see you guys in the next one.